Now, your next game-changing experts will be discussing peace, justice, and strong institutions. They'll be discussing what the role is for philanthropy in advancing the rule of law. This is what they're going to be discussing with a very, very top high-profile broadcaster, a fellow BBC broadcaster, because I'm a former BBC producer myself. He's also an award-winning journalist. He received a prestigious prize for his inspiring coverage of the Obama election. Please welcome onto the virtual stage the presenter of BBC's flagship show, the Today programme. It is Justin Webb. Hello, Justin.
That's a wonderful introduction. Thank you very much. It's a real honour to be here. Wasn't that fantastic looking at that BBC stuff about the ocean? You look at those things sometimes and you think the power of our ability sometimes just to bring people stories and pictures from around the world. They do so much more than a lot of talk, although the talk is also important, and that's what we're going to be concentrating on now. So, yeah, as you say...
Thank you so much, Justin. I'm going to leave you to introduce your panel, but you're absolutely right. As a fellow former BBC producer, seeing the work that goes on at the Natural History Unit in Bristol and the studios and the music, everything they do, they put so much effort and energy into making those shows what they are. So over to you, the expert himself, Justin Webb.
Thank you. Well, look, I've got very little to say from me, but I have got some proper experts here. And as Esther was saying, this incredibly important discussion we're going to have now about peace, justice, and strong institutions. All of those things, of course, themselves hugely important, but specifically the role of philanthropy in advancing the rule of law. And joining me to have this discussion now, Ian McDougall, who is president of LexisNexis Rule of Law Foundation, Katrina Crossley, who is the chief executive officer of the International Law Book Facility, Danna Ingleton as well from HURIDOCS is also with us, and I'm really delighted that Alasdair Stuart is on the line, who is the senior advisor to BBC Media Action. I think probably the place to start, Alasdair, is with you, because there is this intimate connection, isn't there, between another side of what the BBC does and the business of setting up, establishing in nations where things are fragile, less fragility and greater strength. Could you kick us off by telling us about that?
Yes, thank you, Justin. And I feel like we're maybe in the BBC section of the day. Great to see the film just before this. Yes, for those of you that don't know, BBC Media Action is the BBC's international development charity. We're celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. We reach over 100 million people in need every year. In more than 30 countries and 50 languages, providing life-changing and often life-saving information and trying to share the best of the BBC with the world. A core focus for us is promoting freedom of expression and a free press, countering disinformation, supporting open and inclusive societies, stronger democracies, the rule of law in that, and a safer, more habitable planet. And we prioritize doing that with underserved communities around the world, recognizing that the BBC's globally recognized and trusted brand is really powerful for working with media partners around the world. So we work with over 350 local media partners in various countries. And by offering this kind of last mile of support, protection and partnership to media in these fragile contexts, we aim to complement the BBC's global news offer and support these organizations to build their editorial, technical and business skills to really strengthen the role that local media can play in acting as a public service to audiences, supporting democratic institutions and supporting the rule of law. So trying to make that connection between the information and media environment that people live in and how that links in with strengthening justice.
Ian, when I think of philanthropy, I don't instantly, and I suspect a lot of people around the world won't instantly think of, oh, the rule of law and bolstering the rule of law. Tell us more about the connections that do exist, but as well the connections, I suppose, that might in the future be strengthened.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. First of all, I just want to say that I want to take philanthropy to mean something far broader than the raising and donation of money to good causes. That's an important aspect, and it's where we come from. What the Rule of Law Foundation tries to do is sort of be a bridge between the funding and delivery. But there are two kind of areas of the world. I can divide the world into two areas, and the philanthropy operates in different ways in those areas. So, for example, where government institutions are weak, under-resourced, politically constrained or threatened, is the first area. And there we can involve ourselves in things that you would commonly call capacity building. So that would be things like judge training or compiling the laws of a country that might not even be accessible to people, and helping a judicial system by the deployment of technology that helps judges process cases more quickly, for example. And then there's the other element where you might consider the society to be well developed and comparatively well resourced, but the lack of awareness about the rule of law is an important factor. And so there it becomes much more about education, raising awareness, and that kind of thing to help support the institutions that may already be there.
Yeah, and that business, Danna, of raising awareness, but also raising, I suppose, the confidence of people in what they think they can achieve themselves is a crucial area. Oh, I think you might be muted. Hold on, Danna. Yeah, you're there.
I just wanted to first of all say thank you so much for having me on this panel and as part of this day in these really hard times. It's really encouraging to be hearing and seeing so many people and companies that are interested in dedicating resources and people to the SDGs. And you're right. I mean, one of the biggest things that any of us can do to support the SDGs, including the philanthropic community, is ensuring the free flow of information, empowering people to be able to be part of the discourses. We know that so many marginalized communities are often further marginalized because of the ever-growing digital divide, in particular now with emerging machine learning technologies. And at HURIDOCS, one of the things which stands to, I'll go back, HURIDOCS, which stands for Human Rights Information and Documentation Systems. We're basically a collection of human rights experts, documentation experts, and developers coming together to create documentation software for civil society, built with civil society, to ensure that their right to collect information, share information, whether it's being used for just truth-telling, whether it's being used to collect evidence for strategic litigation or regional and international courts, that the software they have backing them up is going to get their data to the right places to be a part of the conversation. And that is one of the biggest issues that we have right now is the faltering of that free flow of information, and also, of course, the confusion with mis and disinformation coming into the scene.
Yeah. It's a really interesting one, that isn't it? Actually, I think we should come back as well to mis and disinformation in a second. Katrina, if I can turn to you, is there a risk when we talk about philanthropy and we talk about all these causes, is there a risk that this becomes a kind of top-down thing where we're talking about ultimately the powerful allowing, disallowing as they see fit individuals and organizations, particularly in marginalized cases around the world, to have the decision making about the way they approach these things, in a sense, taken away from them? And I just wonder what the safeguards are against that.
Thank you very much, Justin, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about the rule of law and why it's so important for the SDGs. And a great question. I run a small law book charity, the International Law Book Facility. We established 20 years ago. So this year's our 20th anniversary, which is a great thing for us. And the idea for the charity came from potential recipients of the books. Back in 2002, I think it was, Lord Thomas at the time met with some Ugandan judges who were over in London, and they complained about the lack of up-to-date materials to help them adjudicate in cases. And Lord Thomas knew that London was awash with books that were no longer needed by law firms and barristers' chambers, and thought, well, we have a need and we have a supply. Let's bring the two together. Fairly simple problem, and with a good solution. And what we do has grown from there. So in 20 years, we've shipped something like nearly 100,000 books to over 285 organisations in 62 countries. And to go back to your question, Justin, the request for those books comes from the organisations who want them. They tell us what they want, and we do our best to meet that. So it's driven by them, not us saying, you need to have books on X, Y, and Z. The need is met as it's expressed to us through those organisations. But there are some other fantastic organisations where the driver is from the marginalised communities themselves. So, for example, Justice Defenders, who many of you will know about. They're a fantastic organisation started in Uganda, and they empower prisoners and prison officers to do their diploma of law with the University of London. They go on to some of them go on to qualify as lawyers, and they help each other representing themselves in court to get bail, all the things that they would not always have access to. So that's just one example of where there are plenty of opportunities for it to be driven from the bottom up. I think, as Lenny Henry was saying.
Yeah, we should then go on to, we've already had it raised, but we should go on to the misinformation and disinformation space, shouldn't we? And I suppose, Alasdair, that's one for you. When we talk about all of these things, how important is it that we have this kind of sense of a level playing field when it comes to an understanding of what is true and what is not true, to put it in the baldest of terms?
Yeah, I think that this is a critical challenge, and it's one being recognised by many. Disinformation's now been flagged as the second greatest threat by the World Bank facing the world in the next 5 years, and this issue is only getting more difficult, more challenging with AI developments. And certainly, if you live in an information environment where you can't get accurate information, you don't know what is true, or there's no agreement about what is true, it's then very difficult to have kind of discussions about rule of law in that type of context. So this is something that we're thinking about a lot at BBC Media Action, both in terms of the research that we do, trying to understand this problem in different contexts and look at what's driving people's vulnerabilities to disinformation, and then thinking about solutions to that. So obviously part of that is about supporting the type of independent public interest media organizations that we work with across the world, embedding kind of journalistic skills and approaches to tackling disinformation, but also thinking about how you build individual and societal resilience to disinformation and the types of manipulation that you commonly find in it. So, for example, we've been doing a lot of work in the last 2 years with the University of Cambridge. We've developed approaches called pre-bunking or inoculation theory, which helps to build people's awareness and resilience to the types of manipulation that are common in disinformation. And we've been looking at how you can adapt and scale those approaches to media and communication where we're working. And excitingly, we've just concluded some research in North Africa, which is showing that those efforts are really working and making people more resilient to that kind of disinformation. But I think globally, we need to think about how to embed these more strategic, more preventative approaches to tackle this problem.
Yeah. Danna, can I turn to you? Because it is a real issue, isn't it? And it's an issue on the ground. And it's an issue because disinformation is not just, is it, something that is wrong or something that is deliberately wrong. It's also it's a mindset almost, isn't it, to which people who feel otherwise marginalized, almost psychologically, can sign up. I mean, there needs to be, I suppose the question I'm searching for here is, how sophisticated do the approaches have to be in order for those approaches to work?
Thank you, Justin. And I think your question hits on one of the biggest issues that we're seeing for civil society globally when it comes to mis and disinformation, which is that the general public fear that the information they're seeing, is it true, is it not true, is actually used to weaponize the documentation of human rights abuse around the world. So human rights defenders are often attacked in their credibility or the veracity of their data because there is so much mis and disinformation in the world. And I think that that's sort of an unhighlighted damage or harm relating from mis and disinformation. And it really goes to one of the things that we do at HURIDOCS to support civil society to against this harm is to document the violations that they see and store it in a way that it could potentially, for example, withstand chain of custody examinations when they're bringing cases at law, and to not be attacked. So whether that's collecting the metadata that goes along with evidence, it's about understanding in the context that they are, the theories of change that they have, and the places that they're bringing their cases, what that chain of custody looks like, what the veracity of data looks like. So it's not just that they have to process through a bunch of information to find out if it's true, like all of us. They need to, and then also additionally prove that the information, the important information they have about what's happening in their lives, their communities, and the human rights violations, and the prevention of their access to justice, they have to additionally prove that that's true rather than just documenting it. And I think that we are going to see that being a huge problem going forward about getting the marginalized voices into the space that matters.
Yeah. Katrina, do you want to add to that?
Yes, I absolutely agree with Danna. And in fact, I was talking about the process you have for collecting data, made me think of the Eyewitnesses to Atrocities app, which I know Ian is much more qualified to talk about than I am. So I think I might hand over to Ian at this point, because I think he can say more than I can about that.
Yep, go for it, Ian.
Yeah, thank you. This started, and by the way, I just want to introduce this by saying one of the things that Lenny Henry said, which I think was really important, is collaboration. This is a good example, actually, of this in practice. Well, there was a discussion with us and the International Bar Association that came about as a result of a discussion with the International Criminal Court, and the ICC said, there's so much. So there are so many videos on the web that show or seem to show atrocities, but we can't use them because we can't verify them. We don't know whether they're true or not. So the Eyewitness to Atrocities app was designed to sit on a person's mobile phone. They could take a video record evidence of war crimes, crimes against humanity, the big things that the ICC would deal with. The app would encrypt, date stamp, location stamp that video, and it gets sent immediately to a Lexis server, where it's held securely to be reviewed by a group of human rights lawyers who are appointed by the IBA to assess whether it could be submitted to the International Criminal Court as evidence. There are two, I think, useful things to know about that. One is that it leaves no trace on the user's phone that the app was ever used, so that in the event that some nasty security person comes along and confiscates the phone, there's no evidence at all ever that the app was used. And the other thing as well is that within about 18 months of its launch, it was helpful to the prosecution of two warlords at the ICC from Democratic Republic of Congo, who were convicted on partly on the basis of Eyewitness to Atrocities app evidence. And so this, apart from being something that we're extremely proud of, highlights the importance of collaboration, working with people who have common interest. It also goes back to the importance of the veracity of evidence, the importance that it should be attached to that, and also the importance that you can demonstrate the trust for the use of the information that you are putting forward. The other thing that I think is important as well, and this is why I spoke in my first comment about bridging between money and action, I suppose, is because the way that was developed was not by raising money. It was by getting volunteers together who are technologists and programmers and people, and actually developing the program ourselves, and then deploying it. So there was no money as such involved in that. That was the call for volunteers to work together to reach this common goal.
That's absolutely fascinating. How widely deployed is it then, Ian? I think people will be really interested, particularly people, well, like me, who've never heard of this app before. It's such a simple idea. Sometimes the simplest ideas are the best, aren't they? But it also, I mean, you know, obviously the anonymity of it and the fact that it won't be on your phone is hugely important too.
It is. It's very important. It was originally developed for, shall I say, devices other than Apple, because in the parts of the world where this was targeted, Apple is not, it's too expensive for many people to actually use. So it was a different platform. So it was mainly being distributed and awareness raised through agencies that operate in some of these very difficult areas. But you do hit on a very good point. I would love it to be more widely known and more widely distributed, because don't forget the mere recording, it isn't enough of itself. I mean, you know, I can't use it to record a neighbour dispute and have someone interested in that. It's going to be reviewed by a panel of human rights lawyers before it's properly considered and moved on.
Yeah, but it exists in the cloud. Then it's gone from your phone. That's the point.
Yes, it exists sort of forevermore on a Lexis server, where it's in a secure vault, as they say in the jargon, and that's where it stays until it's summoned by the IBA.
Katrina, how much of a long-term impact do you think that and similar ideas will have?
I'd like to think it would have a great long-term impact. I think one of the things that probably haven't touched on yet, perhaps, is faith in public institutions. And I know that we've just held an essay competition for law undergraduates, and every single essay that we received, the question was about the rule of law and the challenges in the next 20 years. And every essay we received was quite pessimistic. This is from the voices of young 18, 19, 20-year-old law undergraduates who are looking at the world around them and thinking about the rule of law. And they're quite pessimistic because they can see erosion in public institutions happening all the time. So I think that's one of the major challenges we've got to address. And I think public education around the rule of law and what it is and why it's important and what we can do to protect it is really important. But at the same time, we need to be very aware that bad actors can hijack legislation and it becomes rule by law rather than rule of law, which is a very important distinction, I think.
Well, tell us more about that distinction for a second, and why it matters so much.
Well, rule by law is that there are laws because the people in charge at the time want you to behave in a certain way, do certain things, not do other things. So they write laws and you have to abide by them, which is one thing. Rule of law turns to a broader definition of what is the rule of law. And I know Ian, again, has a brilliant 4-part definition of that. And I won't try to ape Ian's expertise in this area, but I think I'm right in saying the 4 elements of that are that you have an independent judiciary. So important that your judges are truly independent. They're not going to be swayed by the political parties of the time. They have access to the resources that you need to be informed about the law, which is why what we do in the book charity is so important. That you have access to a remedy. There may be all the laws in the world, but if you can't access a remedy, then they may as well not be there. And I'm just trying to think of the 4th one, Ian.
Equality.
You'll have to help me here.
Equality under the law.
Oh, yes, of course. Thank you. Equality under the law. So all the laws that exist apply to everybody equally, regardless of who you are and your so-called station in
If I
society?
can just say, I have a very simple definition for what Katrina was talking about there between rule by law and the rule of law. So what you just heard Katrina go through there was our 4-point definition of the rule of law. I would suggest to you that rule by law is a situation where the country has laws, but one or more of those 4 pillars don't exist or are not functioning properly. That would be the way to look at it.
Yeah. No, well, look, that's very clear. I want to go on now to the extent to which the costs of all of this, we're talking after all about philanthropy in its widest sense, the kind of money that is being funneled into these areas versus the kind of money that in an ideal world would be and would make a bigger difference. And Alasdair, I mean, from the BBC's point of view and from what you do at the BBC, you know, it's and you think across the piece that cuts to aid spending, not just in the US, in Britain as well, but in other countries too. How when we talk about philanthropy, I don't know, we sometimes have this kind of sense of, oh gosh, there's a spigot of money that's coming to do all of these things, and that just isn't true, is it?
No, unfortunately not, and obviously that situation has got more difficult in the last few months. I should say BBC Media Action is an independent charity as part of the BBC. We're not funded by the BBC's license fee, so we rely on donations from donors, from philanthropy, and a small bit of fundraising to fund all of our work and our projects. As I said, that situation for all of us working in that media space has got much more restricted in the last couple of years. I would say the independent public interest media sector has been facing a financial crisis for much longer than that. Kind of models for funding this type of journalism, those types of media organizations, particularly in less developed, less economically advantaged countries, that's been getting much more difficult in the last few years. It's well established. Many of these organizations are kind of facing extinction, and that was before US money was reduced, UK overseas development aid was reduced. It's just a much more difficult environment for all of those types of media organizations, let alone international organizations like BBC Media Action, which is trying to support those types of organizations.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we shouldn't sugarcoat this, should we, Danna? We're talking in optimistic and positive terms, and it's right that we do on a day like this and in a session like this, but the challenges are huge.
The challenges are huge, and I'm so glad to hear you say that we shouldn't be sugarcoating the situation because, as Alasdair mentioned, certainly, some governments' quick removal of an astronomical amount of money from civil society globally has had an impact. But many governments are now considering the larger geopolitical situation, shifting money away from aid, from support, to militarization and security. And from the civil society perspective, we are absolutely feeling that, and it is a very difficult time, both in the reduction of the funds to do the kind of work we need to support human rights research and access to rule of law, access to justice and rule of law, but also just in the general morale of civil society around the world. I mean, civil society is a not just an important, but a vital aspect of these conversations. And a civil society that is weakened is a problem for us all. I think one of the things that the philanthropic community can look to or use as a sort of a measuring post is how to be a steady hand when the winds of political change are changing so quickly and so violently. Many civil society organizations, including my own, have a hard time taking a moment to strategize for the future when we're scrambling to get through the day-to-day. And I think that is an important element of what's happening for the philanthropic community to think of. We know that the philanthropic community cannot replace the role of governments in funding civil society, but what can it do to help us take that moment to breathe, think, strategize going through, strategize different sustainability models. Ian spoke about collaboration, with the Eyewitness to Atrocities app that they were able to put together through collaboration. If money from philanthropy is going into civil society, how can we work together across civil society to make the most of those dollars? At HURIDOCS, we develop a software called Uwazi, which is basically a documentation software, an open source documentation software that over 300 organizations around the world use to document their human rights evidence, to develop their cases. And one of the sustainability models that we have is that, we're going to do what we do really well. We're going to develop our documentation software based on our human rights documentation evidence, and then we'll collaborate with others who are developing tools that might help it. For example, we partner with an organization called Horizontal, who've developed an app called Tella that will allow people in low connectivity areas to get data onto our databases, onto the Uwazi instances. So I think we just need to be really aware that the winds are changing really quickly. We need a minute, and we need that support from the philanthropic community to get through and allow us to find those ways to collaborate, which we may not have been doing in the past, but now recognize as a key aspect of sustainability of civil society to be able to contribute to rule of law.
Katrina, tell us about morale and how to sustain it.
Gosh, I wish I had the skills of Sir Lenny Henry to make everybody laugh, but I don't, sadly. Well, I take great comfort from that. I work with a lot of students who help us collect books, pack books, and ship them off. I had a great shipment of books from the University of Cambridge recently to Ukraine, which got to Ukraine in a fire truck. That's a long story, which I won't go into, but I get a lot of personal motivation from talking to the next generation of lawyers who feel they're inheriting quite a difficult world to navigate through, but they are so passionate. And particularly for lawyers who have the opportunity to do pro bono work through their law firms, that's an incredible way for individuals to make a big difference. And whether that's an hour a week or an hour a month or whatever it might be, lending your skills for free is incredibly powerful. And I think that's that sort of the motivation you get from that is really important.
Can I also?
Yes, do.
Which is the other thing as well is that I'm very, very keen on promoting the idea of getting support through self-interest. And what I mean by that is two things. Number one is that when companies do engage in these kind of activities, what you find is that employee morale goes up, your recruitment goes up, your retention goes up, all kinds of morale-related issues are improved as a result. So it's good for the company as well to be involved in this kind of thing. And the other thing as well is that what we did with our studies on the rule of law was we combined the rule of law index, strength of the rule of law in different countries, with various socioeconomic measures. For example, per capita GDP, infant mortality rates, average life expectancy, all kinds of things. And so it's not only am I saying, yes, this is the right thing to do, I'm saying actually it benefits you directly. Hey, companies, per capita GDP goes up when the rule of law is stronger. Hey, people out there, life expectancy and infant mortality improve when the rule of law is stronger. These are statistically provable things. So let's not only say that this is a wonderful thing for people to be doing, but also that there are perfectly unashamed benefits to get out of doing it as well.
Can I, in the few minutes we've got left, can I ask you all to sort of think about the future? Put on your fortune tellers hats or whatever fortune tellers wears. And I suppose within the context of peace and justice, what should we be prepared for, Alasdair? What's round the corner, both positive and negative, or neither of those things? What are the areas that you're interested in the next sort of, 5 years or so?
So we touched on it earlier, but I think that this idea of societies moving to a context where it's very hard to know what to trust, and that issue becoming worse and worse with AI. But I'll link that back to how to stay positive. I feel like there are these huge challenges in the information and media ecosystems around the world. But every day I speak to journalists, to media organization representatives working in far more difficult contexts than I live in, who are coming up with ideas and potential solutions to this. So just this morning I was speaking to somebody working at Suspilny, which is the Ukrainian public interest, public service media broadcaster, and they're thinking about how they can embed something called content provenance technology, which is basically kind of watermarking of content, which helps people understand its origin, how it's been produced, whether AI has been used in developing it. And they want to embed that in their media production process, so that audiences in Ukraine are better able to identify information, more resilient to Russian disinformation, all those kind of things. So yeah, I take inspiration from those kind of discussions every day, even though I feel like we're facing many, many big challenges in this space.
Danna, same question to you.
Same question, big question. I definitely won't repeat anything that Alasdair said, and try and keep it on the positive side. For me, going into the future, and for all of us at HURIDOCS, I think one of the things that potentially could be very exciting is a reassessment of what the term innovation means in this space and with technology. Often innovation and technology can be about like the next big thing, the next shiniest toy to use. But sometimes true innovation is actually taking a step back and thinking like, yeah, but what's the right tool for this job? And using technology to support people to be able to slow down, to be able to strategize, using it as a tool, for example, ML processing, to be able to do a huge amount of processing in a short amount of time so that they have more time to stop and think and strategize. And I know that can be really difficult right now with the pace of technology. The pace of information is absolutely dizzying the way it's coming at us. But actually, we're getting the tools, if we use it right, to be able to take more space and think more strategically. And I think that's going to be a huge trend going into the future.
Katrina, same question to you. Things, pick out what you think is around the corner.
Well, I like to be a glass half full person, so I like to be positive. And so I would say, for me, it's connectivity. It's all organizations coming together and understanding how they can support each other. We've grown from being a small book charity that sends books. Now we are involved in law librarian training, in judicial training to support, or providing resources to support judicial training. So we're getting the kind of the ecosystem is like one of those little mycorrhizal networks. It's sort of growing all the time. And I take great comfort for that and know that, I mean, just an example, today, talking with Danna and Alasdair and Ian, and how our different activities intersect and how we might be able to support each other in the future and learning from each other. I think keeping learning, keeping connected, those are the important things for me, because the challenges are too many to enumerate.
The connection thing is interesting, isn't it? Because there is a sort of technological side to that. It's so much easier now, isn't it, than it was? I mean, even sort of, I don't know, 5-10 years ago.
Absolutely. You can have Zoom calls with people halfway around the world. You can start to help people create local networks of, for example, in Sierra Leone, we did some law librarianship training, and the law librarians taking part in the training realized they didn't have their own professional organization. So there was a great hunger there for law librarians to get together and share their expertise, share their insights and so forth. And I think that's true on the global stage for lawyers. You have the International Bar Association, which is a fantastic coming together of lawyers from around the world, sharing their challenges and making connections and supporting each other through these very troubling times.
Yeah. Ian, same question to you.
Yeah, I am going to take the positive view of artificial intelligence. We speak, you see in the news a lot about people's fear of artificial intelligence and the damage that it can do. And everyone's imagining an Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator suddenly appearing. And I actually take a different view, which is that there's a tremendous opportunity for artificial intelligence to improve the justice system, the provision of legal advice, and all of the things that go towards supporting the rule of law. Just imagine if we can speed up the ability to put cases through the court system using artificial intelligence, what that would do for people's access to remedy. There remains huge positive possibilities for the use of artificial intelligence in the support of the rule of law.
I think that's fascinating. Give us more, because you're absolutely right. We tend to think of it either as something that will eventually take over and do away with us all in the sort of sci-fi view, or else that actually in specifically those areas of law, that it's a threat to people's jobs, people's livelihoods, and also because of the way that it exists, that there are all sorts of potential issues with its ability to be fair, given how it is constructed. But you're telling us a different story.
Yeah, well, I mean, all of the things that you've mentioned are fears that people have, but I very often say it's a bit like the Mark Twain thing. The reports of the lawyer's demise has been much exaggerated. The thing to remember is that the artificial intelligence system doesn't know anything at all. It's like the atom. Yeah, it doesn't know whether it's in a bomb or whether it's in an electricity generator. It just does what an atom does. It depends the use to which we put it to that's going to be important. Now, in other industrial revolutions, and I consider the AI the fourth industrial revolution, what has happened is that some jobs have been taken away, but most have been transformed and new jobs have been created as a result. So I think what we're going to see over the course of the coming years is the role of the lawyer and the legal profession changing, the nature of what the lawyer does changing, but it won't remove the need for lawyers at all. And what will happen is how we deploy AI will very much be down to us. And I think there are just as many innovative people who can deploy it positively as there are people who can deploy it negatively.
Gosh, what a fascinating way to end. And I wasn't expecting to end there, but we have got to end there because we've zoomed through our allotted 45 minutes. But an incredible, wide-ranging and just fascinating discussion. Thank you so much, all of you, to Ian, to Katrina, to Danna and to Alasdair as well. So with that, plenty to think about. I'm handing you back to Esther.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you, panel. Thank you, Justin Webb. Amazing. Thank you for tuning in from all over the world and all of your incredible comments, insights. This is how we are going to change the world together. I love that. The theme's coming out today. Collaboration, sharing tools and documents, something that RELX STG does very, very well. Connectivity, it's about people connecting, people sharing their knowledge, their expertise, inspiring each other. And I love the fact that we've talked about AI in regards to the rule of law. Artificial intelligence is good, can be good, can help us to make changes,